I'm supposed to be a bit provocative. I'm Jeffrey Heller. And to start the provocation, I did insist on a slideshow, so let me go up and push the clicker on it. I believe it's up here.
You know where it is?
Nope.
I wish I did.
Perhaps somebody can just change them for me. Ah, great. Okay. So, okay. So the slides will come up somewhere, right? There we go. I put together a show in anticipation of these comments and the speakers that would be here today. This is a cover from Life magazine from 1965. Okay? This is about the future of the city. It is not a new idea. We are all here talking about an idea that we are constantly working on, sometimes not very well, and hopefully in this era more powerfully. This is a guidebook from China from 1982, and this was a contemporaneous shot of Shanghai at the time. It is the rate of pace, which is one of the things that we have to cope with. It's been mentioned, but I'm going to integrate these kind of dramatic observations into what I took away from the talks this morning. This is an even more dramatic picture. On the left is the Pudong in 1990, and on the right is the Pudong 20 years later. And in fact, I was told by people who were there at the time that the picture on the left can actually be dated to 1995. So such is the rate of change in Asia these days. This is a shot from just about 5 years ago. This is a shot from last year in the Pudong. In Bangkok, in the 1970s, the city was quite beautiful, filled with rivers and klongs and trees, and those were all filled in to create this marvelous disaster, which is Bangkok today. And its environment, of course, in parallel, completely deteriorated. Bangkok is a failed city in many ways environmentally, and in fact, to show what that means by the filling in of all the natural aspects and waterways, the average temperature per year has increased both daytime and nighttime about 3 degrees centigrade on an annual average, which is a huge amount. Mumbai, dramatic changes between what is new and what is old, and a really inability to date to bring in new infrastructure which actually serves the magnitude of the issue in India. And one of the observations I come away with from this morning is that it is 10 times harder to fix a thing that is done now that is wrong than it is to fix it right in the beginning. So the rate of development in Asia must generate extremely careful responses to what's going on, or the problems get worse later. And we have worked in Guangzhou, basically in a large expanded area of Guangzhou, which would be very green, transit-oriented, developed, and the whole idea is to address the multitude of issues in the beginning and make a very livable place. What was not spoken about thus far today, I actually wanted to bring it up in that last general lunch session, was what about high-speed rail? Well, high-speed rail is an important part of what's going on, not because it gets people around easily or anything, but it will fundamentally change the land use in China. And it is that fundamental change which also needs to be paid attention to in the planning. We're working up in Ulaanbaatar, Inner Mongolia. And this is a shot in the center of town, the southern center of town. There is a steel mill and a concrete mill fired by coal plants that is basically killing people for about a 5-mile radius. And I personally experienced the choking sensation, and flying back to Beijing the day that I was there when they had this huge inversion, you could see, and I photographed this, Okay, this is all of that stuff coming down from Mongolia to Beijing, and some of you may remember that the scale of pollutants went past hazardous, and the U.S. called it crazy bad, and then the Chinese were offended, and it was crazy bad, actually. So what does that get us to? It gets us to an equation of what we have to do. And my observation is that there is a complete coherence of thought amongst this kind of group about what we need to do and where we're going. But the key point here is that the main issues of sustainability have to be coupled with livability, which was mentioned, which is the quality of life issues of why you want to even be alive, and mobility. And in one of our sessions where it was talked about the walkability of cities, it's extremely important, and even bicycling, extremely important. But mobility is the big issue of all forms of transit, and all must be treated with equal respect and must be of the appropriate capacity to move people around conveniently. If you don't have convenience, you erode the issue of livability right away, and you force people back into their cars because they don't like what they got. And it works against what we're trying to accomplish. So there wasn't enough emphasis, I don't think, on the integration of these things, all of them being equally important. And the other thing that wasn't integrated, that there's a common level of thought here, but really it's time to go into implementation, is all of the clean tech, green tech technologies with the physical planning we do must all be done simultaneous if we're going to really make meaningful changes during this historic period of change. And final point is what also wasn't talked about was megacities, okay? This is a diagram that was in the press recently. We're working in Guangzhou, and I've actually discussed this issue with the Guangzhou planners and the mayor and all, and the party secretary of the region. There's 45 million people inside that red line, okay? And there's talk about whether it should be merged or not. Actually, what comes out is it should not be merged. And this very simplistic diagram here is probably the most extremely important point that I would like to make, and also needs to be thought about more, which is that there is a practical limit to the size of cities, no matter what you do, no matter how clever you are, because you get beyond that and mobility breaks down and heat island effect can't be controlled. So satellite cities connected by appropriate transportation to the main cities of each region and separated by green belts. In other words, tackling the thorny problem of urban limit lines, which is another extremely important point that hasn't been mentioned, is all part of the dramatic steps we have to take to cure the problems that are emerging faster than we can count in Asia and affecting all of us in the rest of the world.
Great.